Welcome back to Bang For Your Buck TCG. In the last lesson, we talked about demand. We asked the question, why do people want the card? Today, we're going to be talking about the other side of the coin, supply. When I think about supply, I'm really trying to answer two questions. How many copies are there? And how do I get it? Sometimes, those answers are obvious. Other times, we have to do a little digging. So in this video, I'll walk through the questions and the things I look for to help me better understand supply. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to go over is print cycle. And I feel like this one's going to be important because once you learn to understand print cycles and learn how to look at it, then you'll be able to learn how to predict when a company might stop printing their product. Every TCG is going to be a little different. For today, we're going to be using Pokemon as an example. Pokemon is always releasing new sets. You have Pitch Black recently, and you also have Chaos Rising. To help organize those sets, Pokemon usually use blocks. Each block is identified by letters like G, H, I, and J. Each block includes a group of sets, usually around 6 or 7, that were released around the same time. As new blocks are introduced, older one eventually rotate out. That's why you kind of hear a lot of people say, is it rotating out? Is this still in the print window? Things like that. In 2026, G block rotated out, which means the standard now consists of H, I, and J. For Pokemon, they tend to rotate out of a new block every year. April of 2027, the next block, which is going to be H, is going to be rotated out. Now, why is this important to understand when they rotate out? The general rule of thumb is once a set is rotated out, the company's not going to print it no more. And if a company's not going to print something, that means there's no new supply coming to the market. And if there's no new supply coming into the market and demand stays the same, what do you think is going to happen? So that's kind of the train of thought right there. Going back to Pokemon, right now, G Block, as I mentioned earlier, rotated out this year. G Block consists of Scarlet and Violet base all the way up to Paldanian Fates. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets. The next block is going to be Temporal Forces all the way up to Prismatic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 sets in this as well. And this block is going to be H. So H block, you know that it's going to be rotating out around April of 2027. If someone were to ask me today, where should they start? I will tell them to look in the H block. Why? Because H block is getting ready to rotate out in about 8 months. So I'll generally tell them to start here and then go back. So any older sets that's out of print usually is a safer option. Understanding where a set is in a print cycle helped me understand whether more supply is likely to enter the market or not. Now that we know whether a set is still being printed, I look at their product. I'll use Surging Spark as an example. So when I click on their sealed products, you can see that it could be pretty overwhelming if you were first starting. They have a lot of different SKUs and a lot of different products. And it's easy to assume that if a set is still in print, every product should be equally available. Everything should be printed the same, right? That's what I thought in the beginning, but that's not the case. As I was in the hobby more, I started to learn that certain product SKU is more rare than the other, meaning that Pokemon don't print as much of it. An example will be Pokemon Center ETBs. You can only get this at their website, which is heavily botted, so a regular consumer or collector is gonna have a hard time getting it. I usually gotta get these in the secondary market, but Pokemon Center ETBs is one of the highly sought after items for collectors because it's usually limited in supply. They usually give out wave 2, wave 3, and usually don't print out no more, for the most part. The vice versa is true is you see a lot of these collection boxes that get released in big box stores. Walmart, Target, Costco. Regular ETB got printed a lot. Hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions. Same thing with the Costco. Maybe millions for this too. So when you're looking at this overall, not only do you have to understand when a set is going out of print, you have to understand not all product SKU is printed equally. That's the main point. So understanding the different set type. Pokemon actually has 2 different types of set. They have usually the regular set, and then they also have something called the specialty set. And understanding which which category is going to be important because it affects which type of product is in there. I'm going to give you an example like 151 is considered a specialty set. Prismatic Evolution is considered a specialty set. Shrouded Fable as well, White Flare, Black Bolt. They're all under the category of specialty set. Main set is going to be everything else like Scarlet and Violet Base, Obsidian Flames, Twilight Masquerade. So the main difference between a main set and a specialty set is that a specialty set for Pokemon doesn't contain booster boxes as a product SKU. So the second thing that's different for a specialty set in Pokemon is that they're printed differently, I feel. I feel like certain sets, some specialty set, if it's high in demand like Prismatic, they tend to print a lot more of it for some reason. And that's fine, right? Because it's a high demand set. People love the card and it's good to get cards in consumers' hand. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just for you as a collector, for someone that want to invest, you want to understand these things. For Prismatic, because there's no booster box, you really got to look at what's the next product SKU you will buy. Because of this, I invest differently when it's a specialty set versus a main set. For a main set, I might buy booster box, ETBs, Pokemon Center ETBs, and booster bundles. For specialty set, I'll go heavily in ETBs and booster bundles and a little bit in Pokemon Center ETBs. This kind of relate over to other TCG as well. When you look at One Piece, they also have specialty set or extra booster set. And for One Piece, from what I heard, these extra booster set, they usually don't print too much of it. So if I wanted to invest in One Piece, I'll have to be familiar that their main set, OP13, OP17, it's not going to be printed the same as their EB03, EB04. The next thing that we'll talk about is availability. For this part, I try to answer the question, how do you get this card? Not every card is obtained the same way. Some cards can only be pulled from booster packs. Others are only available as promotion cards. Some are awarded through tournaments or special events, and others might only be available through limited products or exclusive releases. This is important because the way a card enters the hobby can have a big impact on the supply. If you're looking at Surging Sparks, I'm going to assume Surging Sparks Pokemon ETB is printed less than the regular ETB. And because of this, the stamp promo card that comes in this is going to be lower supplied the promo card that comes in this, which should be a lot higher supply. So that's kind of my thought process on availability. You really got to understand how a card is obtained. The cards that you get from Championship, those are going to be a lot more rare, harder to get, and sometimes they're limited in supply. There's only going to be top 64, top 8, maybe even the top prize only. That's why I always ask how a card is distributed, not just what set it comes from. Understanding how a card enters the hobby helped me better understand the supply. So now that we're reaching the end, the last question I ask is, what's changing in the hobby? And this is the same question that I asked during the demand video, but I think it could work the same for the supply as well. When you think about that question, what comes to mind? For me, I think about the new print facility that Pokemon has that's going to be fully operational in 2028. PokeBeach got this great article. It says that they purchased Millennium Print Group Q3 of 2026, I believe. They should be using it. 2027, they're going to be building a large 866 square foot by 2027, and it should be in full scale operation by 2028. So some of the questions you have to ask is, with this new print facility, how is it going to affect the block? Is block J, our current block right now, is it going to be printed a lot more? Who knows? Some will speculate that it's not going to cause a dent in supply, and some will argue that it's going to be a big increase in supply. I mean, you're talking about 1 million square foot of space. They could be using a lot of it for fulfillment and for packaging more collection boxes instead of booster boxes and things like that, right? And honestly, no one really knows, but this is something that's interesting that I'll definitely keep an eye on. Another thing that's changing in the hobby a lot is the reprint cycles. And to me, it's kind of interesting. They really printed a lot of Prismatic Evolution, but they didn't print it too much of, let's say, Shroud of Fable. They're both specialty sets, so what justifies a set to be reprinted? Is it the demand? Is it profit margins? Is it just a very popular set, so they want it in more consumers? Something that you have to understand is that supply isn't static. The hobby is constantly evolving. You have companies like Pokemon getting new print facilities. They can change how often they decide to reprint. They can introduce new different product type and change how sets are released as well in the future. As collectors, we don't control those decisions, but we can pay attention to them because changes like this can affect how supply enter the hobby over time. So that's why I always try to keep learning and updating my understanding as the hobby evolves. You're learning every day. To recap, when I think about supply, I think about if the set is still being printed, what type of product SKU is in that set, what type of set is it, how was the product distributed or obtained, and of course the interesting question, what's changing in the hobby? None of those will answer supply on its own, but together they help me build a better picture. And that's how I think about supply. Next time, we're going to combine everything we learned from demand and supply and put it all together to talk about price. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.